Welcome to the Clarity Advisor Show, where you'll learn how to grow your team today. Join Ken Trupke and his guests as they discuss what works and doesn't work to grow your team in today's world. And now, your host, Ken Trupke.
Hello, and welcome again to the Clarity Advisor Show. Part of the challenges of teams can be inheriting a team, and another challenge can be creating a team. Building that team from scratch. When you come into a position and start doing the work and realize you're going to need some help, and then looking for and finding and then coaching up that team that you build. Well, my guest today has done both several times, and she'll share some of her experiences, the good and the bad. Please welcome my good friend, Michelle Voss. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Ken, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be part of this venture that you have going, and it's been great watching you over the years, growing into what you're doing here, and really appreciate being a part of this.
Good. Well, I'm glad you're here. Yeah, full disclosure, Michelle and I worked together years and years and years ago, and have kind of kept in touch here and there over the years, and I've watched her career as well. So lots of things to talk about. So let's jump in. Why don't you share a little bit, Michelle, of just your history and how you got to where you are now and what you're doing?
Okay, so yeah, it's interesting that the first job I had out of college was at a logistics company moving plants and bushes, and I thought I would try it for a little bit, and I found, after some time and having a good role model and mentor to work with, that I was able to. I just stuck around, and I kept, improving my numbers and adding a person to my team. And then shortly thereafter, getting approached to apply for a manager job. And I thought to myself, like, why, how would I do that when I'm the youngest one in the office? But I've tried to operate in a area of doing things afraid and stepping out of my comfort zone. So I did. From there, I stayed for 16 years and then decided it was time to make a move. And I took another job that eventually led me to my current company. I've been here about 11 years, and we're right in the process of a growth spurt, and it's an exciting time to be part of the logistics industry, especially with my current company.
That's great. I appreciate that. So you start out and you're working by yourself, and then you need some help, and that's just before you were asked to be a manager. So tell me a little bit about. I know you were young in early in your career then. So how did that go? Finding that person and getting them, kind of onboarded, I guess we would say now. But how are you thinking about finding that person and getting them up to speed to help you?
It was what happened was that there was a person at our company that I really liked their work ethic and style, and I thought, I could really work with that person. And we were very successful with what we did and growing what we did. And then once I was able to, I was promoted to the next position. That person was my first selection for, my old job, giving my accounts up and handing that off. I had no problem with doing that because, I knew their work ethic.
Right. Yeah, it's great when you can bring someone over onto your team that you already know and have worked with or seen and been around because they're in the company already. It makes it so much easier to grow. So now you've moved into that manager spot and you need to start building a bigger team. Tell me some of the lessons that you learned about how to find and bring people onto a team so that you can grow and be successful.
Oh, so a couple of the things that I ran into in trying to grow the team and build was that at the time, we didn't have any formal training. And so just decided to, if I was new, what were the things what do I want, what I wanted to know. And I created this plan where everybody that worked in the company would sit with this person for at least 2 or 3 hours and share. And I have a checklist. Okay, I want you to go over all of these things with this person. It plugged that person in to the company, but also on a personal level so that they felt more connected. And so, going from there, and it was just, it was a little bit of a challenge in that role, just because of the fact that many of the people that worked at the company had been there 10 years, 16 years, longer than me, were older than me. But it was just really cool that my company saw something in me that I could bring new to the table. And I used that as a challenge, as a challenge to challenge the norm.
Yeah, that's so great. I love the idea of the kind of the shadowing for both those reasons that you mentioned, that it's the checklist to get the task so you know exactly what. So it just, the checklist is so powerful because it helps everybody understand what we're trying to do. The trainer, if you will, knows these are the things I need to teach, and the trainee knows these are the things I need to learn. And so both people can come away saying, did I teach everything I needed to? Did I learn everything I needed to? And then for you as the leader, you can confirm we did, accomplish the mission. But it's even that second point that I think is so powerful that you mentioned, that it's the social side. Like, it gives people a chance to be with each other and learn about each other and get to know each other, because we're going to be working together. And that's so powerful. And I love that you were even thinking of that early on. So what maybe were some of the other things that you did to help onboard those teammates and find and grow the team as you went from the 1 to 2 to however many it got to be?
One of the challenges I've had over the year is trying to discern the difference between the person that you interview and the person that shows up to work. Um, that has been a challenge that I am still struggling with. I wish that there was perfection in that thing, but the resume looks good, the
Mm-hmm.
interview goes well, the person shows up, and within a week you're like, wait, who is this? And so yeah, being able to discern that. One of the things that we've tried doing in my current job is, when we interview somebody and want to offer them a job, we invite them to come to our office and sit for 2 or 3 hours with us and look at what we do, ask questions about what we're doing, explain to them this is what you would be doing. That way, it's not just somebody in a room explaining, we want you to do these things. It's actual real life interaction to help decide. And when a lot of times after that interview, we say, that it just doesn't feel like it's going to be a good fit. And we've even had people afterwards say that, I don't think this is a good fit for me. And that's win-win for me, because then, we're being proactive on putting the right people in the right jobs.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. When do you want to know that you got the wrong person? At the beginning or
Yeah,
somewhere down the road? Yeah. If you can
right,
figure that out early on, that's so great to do that. Again,
right.
that kind of ride along where it's real life and both parties can see, does this feel like a fit for me? Does it feel like a fit for you? And yeah, you must be doing something right if somebody's figuring out that they're not the right fit, because I think you need to be really clear about who you are. And when you are, then people can figure that out. Like, maybe I'm not a good fit for this role. And again, you want to find that out as early as possible. So I got to ask, do you have a story about somebody? It seems like you've had an experience around this where somebody just interviewed great and then you got them in the role before you started doing this kind of ride along idea, but you hired them based on that resume and that interview, and then they showed up and they weren't who you thought. Is there a story in there somewhere?
Um, so actually, yeah, there's a lot of times when early on, several years ago, that we tried to hire people right out of college, and we had somebody that was working for us that that looked good on paper and actually had some experience with a system that, when we were like, oh, nobody has experience with that. And so
Mm.
What happened was, in that particular case was that the person just had a lot of just like hygiene issues that created a little bit of havoc in the office. And so we tried to work around them, and I'd have, like my team would complain about it, and I would try to, figure out good ways to talk to that person about it. And definitely at that point wished I would have had an HR department that could deal with that instead of having to myself.
Oh yeah, leaders listening know that that is real life. And if you're thinking about becoming a leader, you're not there yet. This is real life, guys. This will absolutely happen to you. So yeah, I think everybody that's been in that spot is kind of cringing to themselves right now because yeah, if you've been in leadership long enough, you will run across that, and it can be challenging, but it's real life. It's a thing, and it's definitely that thing that you aren't going to pick up on a resume or even in that first interview because everybody looks their best in their first interview. I try to
I'm
remind.
cringing you asked me that, Ken.
Oh, I appreciate you sharing that. It's again, that's real life in leadership and building teams and dealing with things. And yeah, might be on the one hand, it might be nice to have an HR department to handle that, but think of the growth that you had to go through to step up and do that and lean into those kind of things and the example that that set for your team. And so that's all
Absolutely.
good. It's all good. So, well, I want to dive into some things specific. I think people might be interested in knowing more about the products and things that you've been involved in over the years. You said you started doing some nursery type products. What is that, and how does logistics work, and how is that? Because I know when we used to work together, that was my first experience with all that, and I found it fascinating once I got the hang of it. So we'll talk about that on the other side of the break. You're here with us on the Clarity Advisors Show. Stay tuned.
Is your business where you want it to be or on track to get there? Clarity Advisors helps business leaders improve communication and get your team aligned and engaged for greater success. We specialize in helping you streamline your sales and operating systems to improve efficiency and grow your profits. Call or text Ken at 616-822-2998 to have a complimentary 12-minute call to see what some clarity could do for you.
Okay. Thanks for joining us. You're with us on the Clarity Advisors Show. We're talking today with Michelle Voss. And Michelle, you've worked in logistics and in nursery, specifically logistics. So tell me about those two things. What exactly do you mean by logistics and what do you mean by nursery? Because I know I didn't know about that when I first started working in that area, and I'm sure a lot of other people are interested.
So the logistics part of what we do is arranging the transportation of live plants and bushes from wholesale growers to different parts of the country, different areas of the business, being like box stores and growers, landscapers, that type of stuff. It's it's very regional. That could because not every area grows certain plants, and it is something that to me, especially in the logistics, I've been in it about 28 years now, and it's never the same day twice. And so I just really have enjoyed the challenges of doing that. And then coming into the last 10 years of my career, focusing actually more on what we call like a specialty products, where we do the plants and bushes. We move anything from giant trees down to flowers to different growers. And then in the off season, in the other season that's big for us, we do Christmas greenery. So when you go to buy wreaths or Christmas trees or things like that in the box stores, particularly in the Midwest and the East Coast, what happens is we have a relationship with our customer, and he sends over, here's all my orders, and we have a system that routes all the loads out, and we report back to them how to load the trucks. Then the next part is finding the trucks, hiring them, and then executing the plan, getting the stuff delivered. And and then being able to sit back and look and see what you did, in at Christmas time in particular, it's a very, very small window between when the stores want their Christmas stuff and when it needs to be in there, because they don't want Christmas stuff there in October when it's
Yeah.
live
Oh,
goods.
absolutely. Yeah. One of the challenges among the things you mentioned there is that seasonality that
Hmm.
different things are at different times. And then, yeah, there's these really tight windows. And I know from when we used to work together, the box stores, the Home Depots, the Lowe's, the Menards,
Hmm.
like that, when they have all those Christmas trees and that greenery out there, they want it in a certain window of weeks because that's their
Yes.
selling season for those products. And they don't need it in January, and they also don't need it in August. Like they need
Yep.
it when they need it, and it's a tight window, and you got to hit it. And they're very demanding, and yeah, there's a lot of challenges there. So yeah, I was always fascinated with the more I learned about that because I just one of those things I never really thought of, like landscaping bushes and things. I don't know. I don't know how they get anywhere. They just show up at my house and the landscaper puts them in. I don't think about, hey, they had to have been grown and they were grown in a
Yes.
certain region of the country and then they had to be transported to these stores and landscaping and gardening places. Like it's all just like really, really interesting. So yeah, so thanks for sharing that. So all right, let's get back on some leadership team kind of things. So I think the place where you were for like 16 years, you inherited the team there. That wasn't one you
That's right.
grew. So, what were some of the challenges of inheriting versus growing from scratch?
Well, I mentioned earlier that I was the youngest by far of anybody on that team, and having to, I made some mistakes. I made some mistakes with respecting, I guess, how things were and taking the role of being the manager as, wielding power over people. And, as a young leader, that was something that I definitely very early on ran into issues, and that was a combination, if I'm being honest, between just not knowing and a little bit of ego. But then coming into it, as I stayed on and realized that it's just so much better to get people aligned, and there's just such a difference. We've been talking about this a lot at my current company. There's just such a difference between that phrase of buy-in versus being aligned. And as a leader, we to me the whole concept of buy-in is me trying to make somebody do something, me trying to make somebody want to do something, versus just setting an alignment of goals. Like, this is what we need from you, for this position, for the company, for the enterprise, and working that way.
Yeah, that's a powerful. I actually took a note there about the buy-in versus align. I think that's a really interesting nuance. So you said you made some mistakes. What were some of those mistakes? You should share maybe one or two things that that you, looking back, you realize that that didn't really work well.
Well, right off the bat, within the first 6 weeks, sitting down with somebody who had previously been my boss, and actually the person that had interviewed me, and trying to wield control over this person because I had, 5 years of experience of, working with her and knowing her quirks, and just plowing ahead with, this is not acceptable and we need you to change. And it worked. She ended up leaving, and I don't blame her. I also, know that the stuff that I was trying to do was the right thing. It was just not delivered correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not necessarily the direction you're headed or the reasons behind it, but yeah, working working with people is a little trickier than just laying out the game plan and going, "Go, here's what I'm going to need you to do."
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love the point you're making about, coming at people like being the boss and wielding power, and that just doesn't work. So after you had challenges with that person, how did you pivot in your style to not make that mistake again with the other folks?
So today, when I'm working with people and trying to lead the teams, I do try to again, like, go back through that alignment and the discussions. And I'm so grateful that I work for a company now that over the last few years has they are very focused and have a buy-in on, well, they don't have a buy-in, but they have a relationship with somebody that we work with for leadership skills. And just talking about, and this is not my terminology. Dr. John Grinnell is the person that we work with, and he talks a lot about on-purpose behavior and off-purpose behavior, and how this behavior aligns with what we want to do, who we want to be, what's good for the enterprises, and this is off-purpose behavior. And so looking at things that way instead of, you're doing this wrong. I think that actually one of your previous podcast guests I had written down, it's not that you're doing it wrong. There's a different way in how you communicate that to people that you work with or that work for you.
Yeah, that alignment to what I would consider to be kind of core values, or what I'm hearing you say as on purpose behavior, is powerful. It's like, this is how we want to do things. And we're not going to be perfect. We're not going to do it right every time, but we're going to know when we're on purpose and off purpose. And when we're off purpose, we'll make that adjustment, maybe even make that apology if it directly impacted someone, and then get back on purpose. And that's a great concept. I love that. So now the team you're at now, you've built that team again over the last 10 years or so. And we were talking before the show started that you're getting some opportunities for your team because of what you've built with the team and because of who they are and who they've become. Tell us, share some of that story of how you were able to help them grow to the point that now you're getting even more opportunities.
Well, for many, many years, we focused just on, what we were good at. And, for me personally, the job, we had it fragmented into everybody is a money earner. And so the people that you hire, you want them to always be able to bring in revenue. But one of the things that for me in particular was a sticking point was, for instance, say like the accounting end of it and the billing and all of that. And I would try to take that on myself. And in one of the leadership things that I was at, I heard about, like doing what you're good at. And so what I decided to do was to approach my boss and say, I would really like to hire somebody just to handle primarily our accounting, to get that off of me. And what that did was, for me and the other person that I have doing the transportation end of it, it freed us up to do what we were good at, which is, sales and talking to carriers and covering loads, and the paperwork and all of that was handled by somebody who was really, really good at it. And so she was so good at it that it also freed up time for her to eventually, also add to our bottom line, because she caught on to what we did. But her primary focus is that, and our primary focus was another thing. And it was so helpful. And it made the team just feel really healthy to have people only focused on doing what they're good at.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense when you get people in their roles of strength, and when it's something that you could do, but it's not the thing you do best or the thing that's most important to the organization that you do, to have somebody in there that also loves that kind of work. And then, like you said, frees up the team to move forward. Yeah, that's what creates capacity to take on more opportunities. So,
and another thing too, I just wanted to just say that, like in building our team, I still go back to that same approach from all those years ago, where I want everybody on the team to know everybody else's job. And so we make sure that, even when we bring in temporary people, that the temporary people for our season sit with everybody so that they understand the whole picture. They don't need to have it memorized. But my end goal on building any team is, if the phone rings in our office, then anybody can pick it up. Anybody can help with that problem. Yeah, there are people that are focused on that. There are people that are good at it, but everybody can do everybody's job.
Okay. Now, you've mentioned that you've been in kind of the same industry, but one way or the other, you've been a leader for almost 3 decades. So what have you seen that's maybe changed over that time, that it used to work, but it doesn't work, or something that today you need to be more aware of that didn't used to be a thing in the past? What are some of those things for you?
For me, one of the things that that I find to be the biggest challenge is just the big gap in generational work attitudes. What the generation above me was just like, this is how it is, it's how it's always been. And my generation being, completely like almost like the middleman between the younger generations of the younger generations have, I think, improved the workforce in drawing some healthier boundaries. And so, yeah, that's been a big challenge in that. And then also just in hiring that younger generation and recognizing that they do not believe the same things that we were taught and that we believed or used to believe. Like you have to put your time in, that you have to work at the same role for 5-10 years before you can advance. What I've tried to do is create opportunities within those jobs so that, in essence, the ideal thing would be there's no dead end jobs.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I think those are some really key distinctions of how it kind of used to be, and that, yeah, there's been some transition to that. And I'm with you. I think the younger generations, the newer people in the workforce, are bringing some healthier boundaries and drawing into the light some things that didn't really work that well, but nobody was really
Yeah.
going to say out loud. And so that's been good. So, well, listen, Michelle, I know your heart, and just from knowing you over the years, you care about your teams. You care about your people, not just because they're on your team at work, but because they're people that you know and care about. So I'm curious, what would be your best advice for leaders coming up as they become leaders or have been leaders for a few years and are looking to really succeed with their teams?
My biggest thing that I've tried to convey to anybody who wants to be a leader, and the way that I try to do it is that I don't ask anybody who works for me to do something that I wouldn't be willing to do myself, and that no job is too insignificant, for a leader to do. That I don't really buy into the role of being on top of the box. That there was something I saw not too long ago, that the leadership styles of one leader on a box and all the employees are pulling it, versus another leader there with the team pulling the box together.
hmm Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the leader's job in true servant leadership, which I would even argue to be a successful leader, those are one and the same. You can't be a leader and not be a servant. And
Right.
so you've got to be down there with the team and let them know that, yeah, you'll do what they're doing, and you have done what they're doing, and you're willing to do it, and there's nothing that's insignificant. And so, yeah, I love all those points. So listen, I know that you also are a learner because you want to become better yourself and then turn around and pour that back into your team and the folks around you. So what are some things that you're consuming these days, books or podcasts or audiobooks or whatever it is?
Well, okay, Ken, I'm going to tell you that over the last 2 weeks, I've been an avid consumer of the Clarity Advisors.
Well, that's
It
perfect.
is,
Excellent.
it's amazing. I've gone on walks with you. I've watched you on YouTube. My husband and I had dinner with you the other night. My team actually, just after I listened to the disc one that you did, we listened to it. And a funny story is I have one of my team members is a avid dog lover, and she and the team were just cracking up laughing at her style being the golden retriever.
Okay.
And another, besides Dr. Gunnell's book, I've been, going through that recently just because we just got off of a leadership thing last week. He had us read this book called Switch. And it's so interesting on the challenges of trying to incorporate change within a leadership. And I'd read it a few years ago when I had been in a seminar with him, or a session with him. And it's been so cool to get that out and be like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Because just because I read a book once doesn't mean I have it memorized. So,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I've there's something to the idea of reading that book that second, third, fifth, 10th time, because each time there's typically so much in a good book that you can't get it all the first time. And so you're not ready
Mhm.
for it until that second or third or fifth time. But also you're different. You're in a different
Right.
place. You've had different life lessons and experiences, and you're more open to some of the new things. So yeah, reading something again and again, especially over a period of years, yeah, it's always interesting how much you learn. And then yeah, like you said, you remember too, like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, because we don't necessarily always need to be taught. We need to be reminded. And so we
Yeah.
can have books remind us of those things that we once knew.
You
So,
know,
well,
and at the
Michelle, this,
time,
oh,
I was
sorry, go
just to
ahead.
say at the time too, when we first read it, we weren't necessarily being challenged to do a lot of changes, like what we're doing now. It's just it's a really great that book is great. I recommend it.
Yeah, and we'll have that in the show notes as well. So, Michelle, who would be a good person to reach out to you? You've got such a wealth of experience, and how would they best do that?
Um, I think that the easiest way, if somebody wanted to get a hold of me, would probably be via my LinkedIn profile, um, or to email me. I think my email will probably be in the links for
Mhm.
your
Absolutely.
podcast, or give me a call. I am always open to talk to people and meet new and make new relationships.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll definitely do that. We'll get all the contact things into the show notes, as well as those book recommendations. It's been such a fun time catching up with you. I'm so glad you were
Same.
able to make some time for the show. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Ken. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. And that brings us to the end of another Clarity Advisor show. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Take care now.
Thank you for listening to the Clarity Advisor Show. Clarity Advisors is a speaking, training, and consulting firm specializing in helping you simplify your sales and operating systems to improve efficiency and grow your profits. Connect with Clarity Advisors today to learn more about how they can help you improve communication and get your team aligned and engaged for greater success.